The gate slammed shut behind her, and the sound echoed through Amora's chest like a gunshot. She stood in the rain outside the park estate, one suitcase beside her, her fingers curled around a small white stick, a pregnancy test, two pink lines still visible through the water drops collecting on its surface. The silk blouse she'd worn to what she thought was a romantic dinner was soaked through now, clinging to her skin. Her gold earrings, a wedding anniversary gift from Seo-jin, caught the distant light from the estate's windows and threw it back in jagged little pieces. She had been inside that house 40 minutes ago. She had walked into Seo-jin's study with the test behind her back and a nervous smile on her face, ready to change both their lives. Instead, she found him sitting behind his mahogany desk with his hands folded and his mother, Madame Seo, seated beside him like a judge at a sentencing. The divorce papers were already on the table. Seo-jin. Her voice had come out smaller than she intended. What is this? He didn't look up immediately. When he did, there was something in his eyes she had never seen before, not cruelty exactly, but the absence of everything that had once looked like love. He looked at her the way a man looks at a contract he has already decided to void. Amora. He said her name like it was a formality. Sit down. I don't want to sit down. I want you to tell me what those papers are doing on your desk. Madame Seo exhaled slowly, the way someone exhales when they've been waiting a very long time for something unpleasant to be over with. She was a small woman, immaculately dressed, with a coldness that lived behind her eyes like permanent winter. We've been patient, Madame Seo said. More patient than you deserved. Eo me on him, please. Do not call me that. The older woman's voice did not rise. It didn't need to. You were never my daughter. You were a phase my son indulged, and phases end. Amora turned back to Seo-jin. Are you going to let her speak to me like that? In our home. Seo-jin finally stood. He straightened his jacket, walked around the desk, and stopped just out of arm's reach, a careful, deliberate distance. My family needs an heir, he said quietly. Not just a child. An heir with the right bloodline, the right connections. Someone the board will respect. Someone whose background doesn't require explanation at every dinner table. He paused. You were never that person, Amora.
I thought love would be enough. I was wrong.
I was wrong. The pregnancy test was still behind her back. She almost told him. The words were right there. I'm carrying your child, Seo-jin. Right now. Inside me. But she looked at his face, that careful, rehearsed face, and understood with cold clarity that it would not change a single thing. It might even make it worse. Madame Seo would find a way to weaponize the pregnancy, to make demands, to take the child and discard Amora even more efficiently. So she said nothing. Leave Korea by tonight, Seo-jin said. The settlement is in the papers. It's more than fair. Or. Her chin lifted. Something flashed across his expression. Or I make sure you can never leave at all. She picked up the suitcase herself. Nobody offered to help. She walked through the marble corridors of the house she had decorated, past the kitchen where she had learned to cook doenjang jjigae to please his mother, past the framed photo of their wedding day that hadn't been taken down yet, and out through the front door into the rain. The gate slammed behind her. And Amora stood there on the wet pavement, the pregnancy test dissolving in the rain, and made a decision. She was not going to cry. Not here. Not where the estate security cameras could see her. She would not give the parks the image of a broken woman walking away. She would give them nothing. She started walking. She had no destination. Just movement. Just the need to put distance between herself and that gate before the weight of what had happened fully landed on her. The streets of this neighborhood were wide and quiet and lined with luxury cars and high walls. She passed 3 streets before her legs remembered that she was exhausted, that she hadn't eaten since morning, and that she was pregnant. She stopped at a bus stop and sat down on the bench beneath the shelter, out of the worst of the rain. The street in front of her was empty. She opened her palm and looked at the test one more time. Then she looked up at the dark sky and exhaled, slow and shaking. What do I do now? She had no answer. And then the street was no longer empty. 5 matte black SUVs appeared from the far end of the road, moving in silent formation like something out of a film. They slowed as they reached her and stopped. The engines did not cut. The hazard lights did not come on. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the rear door of the middle vehicle opened. He stepped out without hurrying. He was tall, taller than she expected, with broad shoulders filling out a black suit that had clearly been made specifically for his body. His face was composed in that particular way of people who have long since stopped being surprised by anything. Sharp jaw, dark eyes that swept the street once, cataloguing, calculating, before settling on her. He walked toward her with his hands in his pockets and stopped a few feet away. "Amora Adeyemi," he said. Not a question. She stiffened. "Who are you?" "My name is Kangmin." He glanced at the estate gate, just visible at the end of the road, then back at her. "I know what happened in there tonight. And I have a proposition that I think you'll want to hear. If this story already has you gripped, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a new episode. New stories drop every week. Now, let's get back to Amora." She stared at him. "You know what happened. Seojin Park has been on my radar for 14 months, Kangmin said simply. You were his wife. Now you're not. And you're sitting in the rain alone, which means they gave you nothing worth keeping. That is none of your business." "No," he agreed. "It isn't. Not yet." He tilted his head slightly. "But it could be." Amora looked at him for a long moment. The rain was still falling. One of the SUV drivers had stepped out and opened a large black umbrella, holding it at a respectful distance, close enough to shield Kangmin from the rain without crowding him. He hadn't asked for it. It was simply done, which told her everything about who this man was in relation to the people around him. "Sit down," she said. He looked mildly surprised. Then, almost imperceptibly, something shifted at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile, but the cousin of one. He sat down beside her on the bus stop bench. "Talk," she said. "I need a wife," Kangmin said. "Not in the way most men need one. I'm in the process of moving my operations into fully legitimate business. Corporate boards, government contracts, public-facing investment. For that, I need a public image that doesn't invite questions. A wife provides that. A wedding ring, a name, a face at dinners and events. That's all." Amora looked at the road ahead of them. "You're describing a business transaction." "I am." "And what do I get?" "The park's humiliated you tonight," he said. Quietly, behind a closed gate, with no witnesses and no consequences. "I can change that. Not through violence, through something they fear far more. Through power they cannot touch, cannot buy, and cannot outmaneuver." He paused. "I can make Seojin Park watch everything he has built become something he no longer controls. And I can make sure you are standing in the room when it happens." Amora said nothing for a moment. "Why me specifically?" she asked. "You could find someone easier. Someone without complications." Kangmin looked at her directly. "Because you have a reason that cannot be faked. Anger with real roots is more convincing than any performance I could arrange. And because the parks already know your face. When you walk back into their world, it will mean something." He stood up. "I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not asking you to trust me beyond what I earn. I'm asking you to let me give you what Seojin took from you tonight. A name that means something. A position they cannot strip from you. And a front row seat when he finally loses." She looked down at the pregnancy test still in her palm. Then she closed her fingers around it. "I'm pregnant," she said. Silence. "It's Seojin's," she added. "He doesn't know. I didn't tell him." Kangmin absorbed this without expression. Then, measured and quiet, the child will have my name and my protection. No conditions attached to that. Something cracked open in her chest, not hope exactly. Something more fragile than hope, and more dangerous. She pressed it back down. If I find out at any point that you've lied to me, she said, I walk. No negotiation. No conversation. I disappear and you lose everything you said you needed me for. Understood? She stood up, squared her shoulders, and looked at him. Then we have a deal, Mr. Kangmin. He nodded once. The driver stepped forward with the umbrella, now holding it over both of them. Kangmin gestured toward the nearest SUV, and Amora picked up her suitcase before anyone else could reach for it. She got in the car herself. She did not look back at the gate. The weeks that followed were nothing like what she had imagined. She'd expected coldness, a transactional arrangement lived out in polite, careful distances. What she found instead was something more complicated and far harder to navigate. Kangmin's estate was outside the city, large, private, surrounded by forest on 3 sides. Her wing of the house was separate from his, connected only by a long corridor with tall windows that let in the morning light. There was a housekeeper named Mrs. O who took one look at Amora on the first morning and decided, entirely on her own authority, to start leaving warm barley tea outside her bedroom door at 7 a.m. Kangmin had a doctor on retainer. The morning after she arrived, he arranged a full prenatal check without fanfare or announcement. He simply told her the appointment time and that the doctor was discreet. He did not ask to be present. He did not ask about the results. He just made sure it happened. It was such a small thing. And somehow it undid her more than almost anything else. She told herself it was strategy. That a pregnant wife was a more convincing prop. That keeping her healthy served his plan. She was good at telling herself things. At dinner on the 4th evening, she asked him directly, "What is your actual plan for the parks?" He set down his chopsticks. Step by step. First, the public appearance, the gala in 2 months. By then you'll be visibly pregnant, which is important. The narrative writes itself. Second, I've already begun acquiring minor shareholders of Park Industries. Quietly. Through holding companies they won't trace back to me until it's too late. Third, he paused. Third is something I'll tell you when it's time. You don't trust me with the full picture. I don't trust anyone with the full picture, he said. That's different. She studied him. You're very good at sounding reasonable. It's a skill. Is any of it real? Or is everything with you a performance? He picked his chopsticks back up. Eat, Amora. You barely touched your food. She wanted to push. But she looked down at her plate and realized she was actually hungry, properly hungry, the kind that came with the pregnancy, sudden and insistent, and she ate. That night, she lay awake and thought about the question she'd asked. And she realized that what disturbed her was not his non-answer. It was the fact that she was already hoping the answer was yes. The transformation happened gradually, then all at once. By the 5th week, she had stopped flinching at the sound of heavy footsteps in corridors. By the 6th, she had started using the estate's private library, where she discovered Kangmin had a collection of novels, not business texts or legal documents, but actual fiction, organized not by genre but, as far as she could tell, by how many times he had read them. The most worn spines were on the lowest shelf. She pulled one out once and found handwritten notes in the margins. Small observations. A question mark next to a paragraph about grief. An underlined sentence that read, he had learned to look like a man who needed nothing, and had almost forgotten it was a performance. She put the book back very carefully. By the 7th week, they had developed a rhythm at dinner, conversation that moved from logistics to something closer to genuine exchange. He asked about her life before Korea. She told him about Lagos, about her mother's fabric shop, about the scholarship that brought her to Seoul for graduate school and the love story she thought she was walking into. Do you miss it? He asked. Lagos. Every day, she said. But I couldn't go back as the woman who got thrown out. I couldn't let my mother see that. And now? She considered. Now I'm going back as someone else. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't fully read, something that lived between respect and something warmer and far less comfortable for either of them. Yes, he said quietly. You are. But it was in the 9th week that Ryan, Kang Min's most trusted lieutenant, a compact, watchful man who spoke rarely and listened constantly, said something he didn't know she could hear. She had been coming down the east corridor toward the study when she heard his voice through the half-open door. Boss, the Parks are already nervous. The board meeting last week, 2 of their minor shareholders asked questions they've never asked before. The plan is working exactly as you designed it. She stopped walking. Exactly as you designed it. She stood in the corridor for a long moment, the morning light falling across the floor in long pale strips. Then she turned around and walked back to her room. She did not say anything. Not that day. She sat with it, pressing it flat inside herself the way she had learned to press things flat, turning it over, examining it from every angle. She had known from the beginning that this was arranged. He had told her that himself, in the rain, on the night they met. He had been watching Seo Jin for 14 months. But knowing something in theory and feeling it in your body were 2 entirely different things. And the thing living in her body right now, the thing she had been so careful not to name, it was sitting in the corridor outside that study with her, listening. She did not confront him. Not yet. She needed time, not to decide whether she was angry, because she was already certain of that, but to decide what her anger meant. Whether it meant she had been a fool. Whether it meant she had let herself become exactly what he'd said she was, a weapon with real roots. She started watching him differently after that. She noticed the way he always positioned himself between her and the door in any room they shared, not protectively, she told herself. Tactically. She noticed the way he had learned, somewhere in those 9 weeks, exactly how she took her tea and had started making sure it was ready before she asked. She told herself that was attentiveness in service of the performance. She noticed the way he had started leaving the light on in the library corridor on the nights he knew she read late. She told herself he had simply told Mrs. O to do it. She was very good at telling herself things. The gala was 3 weeks away. Kang Min called her into the study one evening, a rare thing. He usually came to wherever she was rather than summoning her, and she found him standing at the window with a glass of water, looking out at the forest. The event is at the Grand Seoyang Hotel, he said when she entered. Black tie. Every major family in Seoul will be there. The Parks attend every year without fail. I know, she said. Seo Jin and I went twice. He turned. Then you know the room. You know how they move through it, who talks to whom, who watches whom. That's useful. What do you need from me that night? Walk in beside me, he said. That's all. The rest will happen by itself. She sat down in the chair across from his desk. And what happens after the gala? After Seo Jin sees me and the whole room has something to talk about? What's the 3rd step? He looked at her steadily. The 3rd step is the board. Explain. I now hold 23% of Park Industries through 4 different holding companies. None of them are connected on paper. But in 2 weeks, I'll move to consolidate, and when I do, I'll have 51%. Seo Jin will still be sitting in his chairman's office when it happens. He won't see it until the notifications hit his phone. Amora was quiet for a moment. And Madame Seo? Something changed in Kang Min's expression, barely, but she caught it. Madame Seo has a history. A long one. Financial arrangements she made 20 years ago with people who are now very interested in keeping those arrangements quiet. I've been holding that information for 2 years. I'll release it through the right channels the morning after the board consolidation. 2 years, she said slowly. You've been building this for 2 years. Yes. And I came along 9 months into it. Yes. She held his gaze. So I should ask myself, was any of this about me? Or was I always just the piece that made the story more convincing? The room was very quiet. Kangmin set down his glass and crossed toward her, stopping at the edge of the desk. He looked at her the way he had looked at the forest, like something that required his full attention and something he did not entirely know how to approach. "I'm not going to answer that tonight," he said finally. "Not because I don't have an answer. Because I want to be standing in a room where there's nothing left between us, no plan, no arrangement, no useful purpose for either of us, before I say it. So that you know it isn't strategy." She searched his face. "That's either the most honest thing you've ever said to me or the most sophisticated manipulation I've ever encountered." "I know," he said quietly. She stood up. "Then we'd better get to the gala." On the morning of the event, Mrs. O arrived at Amora's door with a garment bag and an expression of quiet ceremony. Inside was a dress Kangmin had arranged, deep emerald silk, cut to accommodate her now visible pregnancy, elegant without trying to hide anything. A separate box held earrings, gold, long, catching the light. Amora stood in front of the mirror for a long time. She thought about the woman who had stood in the rain 9 weeks ago, holding a pregnancy test, with nothing but a suitcase and the echo of a slamming gate. She thought about her daughter. She had learned it was a girl at the last appointment, and she had told no one yet, holding it in her chest like something sacred, and she thought about what kind of world she was building for her. She put the earrings on. The Grand Seoyang Hotel blazed with light. Valets and photographers clustered at the entrance. Inside, the ballroom was all crystal chandeliers and ivory tablecloths and the particular energy of wealthy people performing contentment at each other. Seo Jin was already there when they arrived. She saw him from across the room, standing with Yuna, his new fiancée, a composed woman in pale blue who was doing everything right. Laughing at the right moments. Touching his arm with exactly the right frequency. Playing the role Amora had once played. Seojin looked relaxed. Confident. Like a man who had made a clean decision and moved on. Then the main doors opened. Amora walked in on Kangmin's arm. She did not look for Seojin immediately. She had decided that in the car on the way over, she would not search for him. She would let him find her. She kept her chin level and her expression composed, and she moved through the entrance the way her mother had always moved through a room, like she had already decided she belonged there. The shift in the room was physical. She felt it before she saw it, a change in the air, a wave of attention redirecting. Heads turned. Conversations paused and reconvened in lower registers. Because everyone in this room knew Kangmin's face, even if most of them had never been in the same room as him. He was the figure at the edge of their world, the one they whispered about and carefully avoided. And he was here. With a woman they recognized. She heard Seojin's champagne glass hit the floor before she turned to look at him. He was staring at her with an expression she had never seen on his face before, not guilt, not exactly, but something adjacent to it, something punctured. Yuna was looking between them with careful confusion. Madame Seo, standing 3 feet away in dark purple, had gone very still. Seojin crossed the room toward her. Kangmin's hand moved to the small of her back, not possessive, she thought. Protective. There was a difference, and he had always known it. Elena, Seojin started, and then caught himself. Amora. What? He looked at Kangmin. Who is this? My name is Jang Kangmin, Kangmin said pleasantly. And it's Mrs. Jang, if you're speaking to my wife. Seojin's jaw tightened. Amora. I need to speak with you privately. No, she said. The word was very simple. Very clean. Amora. She said no, Kangmin said. His voice was still pleasant. That was the thing about him, he was most dangerous when he sounded the most reasonable. But I'll say something on her behalf, since you seem to need it. The quarterly review for Park Industries is in 2 weeks. I'd spend less time at galas and more time in the boardroom. You're going to need the preparation. Seojin stared at him. What does that mean? Kangmin smiled, a small, unhurried, immovable thing. It means enjoy your evening. He turned, and Amora turned with him, and they walked deeper into the room. She did not look back. But she heard Madame Seo's voice behind her, low, aimed at Kangmin's retreating back, sharp as a pin. This is about Park Industries. It was always about the company. She's just your cover. Amora kept walking. But the words followed her all the way to the other side of the room. They stayed at the gala for exactly 2 hours. Kangmin moved through the room with the ease of a man who had nothing to prove, speaking briefly to a few people, introducing Amora without ceremony, never leaving her side. She worked the room in her own way, calm, warm where it was appropriate, regal where it wasn't. She felt the eyes on her all evening. She felt Seo-jin's eyes specifically, from whatever corner he'd retreated to, tracking her with that new expression she didn't have a name for. She didn't give him anything to work with. On the drive home, the car was quiet for a long time. The city moved past the windows in blurred gold and red. Madame Seo spoke to you tonight, Amora said eventually. At the gala. I heard part of it. She said what she believes, Kangmin replied. And is she right? He turned to look at her. In the dark of the car, his face was half lit, half shadow. About which part? About me being your cover. A pause. You were always meant to be part of the plan. I told you that on the first night. I never lied to you about that. But you didn't tell me the whole truth either. She kept her voice steady. You said you'd been watching Seo-jin for 14 months. What you didn't tell me was that you already knew what his mother was planning. You knew he was going to throw me out. You positioned yourself to be there. Another pause. Longer this time. Yes, he said. The word sat in the car between them. So you were waiting for me, she said. That night in the rain. You didn't just happen to drive past. You were there because you knew I would be there. Yes. She nodded slowly. Not with acceptance, with the kind of careful movement that people make when they are processing something they can feel in their bones. Then every moment after that, every dinner, every conversation, the doctor, the library light, she stopped. Was that part of the plan too? He was quiet for a moment that stretched and stretched. The plan needed you stable, he said. Healthy. Presentable. Convinced of your own value so it showed at the gala. He paused. That's what I told myself for the first month. She waited. By the second month, he said, and his voice had changed, something in it had let go of something, I stopped needing to tell myself that. She looked at him. He was looking straight ahead now. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. This particular thing. I know how to build plans. I know how to hold patience like a weapon and wait years for the right moment. I know how to make enemies fold without ever raising my voice. But this, he stopped. What? She asked. Wanting something to be real, he said. Not useful. Not strategic. Just real. I don't have a plan for that. The car moved through a long curve of road, and then the estate gates came into view ahead, lit up soft and gold in the dark. Amora said nothing for the rest of the drive. But when they pulled up to the entrance and the driver opened the door, she sat still for one moment before getting out. Then she said, quietly, to the air in front of her, you should have told me. She got out of the car and went inside. She didn't sleep. She lay in the dark with her hand on the curve of her stomach, and she thought about everything, the gate slamming, the rain, the bus stop, Kangmin's face in the half-light of the SUV door, the library with its worn spines and handwritten margins. He had learned to look like a man who needed nothing, Mrs. O's morning tea, the doctor, the corridor outside the study where she'd heard Ryan's voice and felt something inside her go cold. She thought about her daughter, this small, absolute, uncompromising person who was already making her presence known in the most physical ways, who had no idea that her life had been shaped by betrayal and strategy and rain. She thought about what she wanted. Not what Seo-jin had taken. Not what she was owed. What she actually, in the deepest and most honest part of herself, wanted. At 3 a.m. she got up, wrapped herself in a robe, and walked down the corridor to the library. She turned on the lamp and sat in the chair she had claimed as hers over the weeks. She reached for the book she had found with the margin notes, the one with the underlined sentence, and opened it in her lap. She didn't read it. She just sat with it. At some point she heard the soft sound of footsteps stop outside the library door. She looked up. Kang-min was standing in the doorway in a dark shirt and no jacket, looking like a man who had also not slept. "I'm not going to apologize for the plan," he said. "I know," she said. "But I am going to tell you something I haven't told anyone." He came into the room and sat down, not beside her, in the chair across from her. He leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. "My mother left when I was 9. My father was complicated. The world I built because I decided that the only reliable thing was leverage. Information. Position. If I held enough of those things, nothing and no one could take anything from me again." She watched him. "And that worked," he said. "For a very long time, it worked perfectly. And then I sat down at a bus stop in the rain next to a woman who had just lost everything, and instead of seeing an asset, he stopped. Breathed out. I saw someone who was not going to break. And I didn't know what to do with that. So you made me part of the plan," she said. "It was the only language I had," he said. The lamp threw warm light across the room. Outside, the forest was dark and still. Amora closed the book in her lap. "She's a girl," she said. "The baby. I found out 3 weeks ago. I haven't told anyone." Something moved across his face, something that had nothing calculated in it, nothing strategic. Just a person receiving news and feeling it. "Okay," he said softly. "She's going to need to see what a real thing looks like," Amora said. "Not a performance. Not an arrangement. A real thing." She looked at him steadily. "I'm not forgiving you tonight for not telling me the whole truth from the start. That's going to take time. But I'm also not walking away, because I'm not doing this," she gestured between them, halfway. "If this is going to be real, it's going to be all the way real. No more plans I don't know about. No more held back information." She paused. "Agreed." He held her gaze. "Agreed." 11 days later, at 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, the notifications hit Seo-jin's phone. Amora wasn't there to see his face when it happened. She didn't need to be. Kang-min had arranged for her to be informed in real time through Ryan, who relayed updates in clipped, factual sentences. The board meeting had been called as an emergency session. 3 of Park Industries' most senior shareholders had already issued statements. Madame Seo's historical financial entanglements had been quietly leaked to 2 investigative journalists the night before and were now running as a breaking story on the country's largest financial news platform. By noon, Seo-jin's chairmanship was under formal review. By 2 p.m., his phone rang. Kang-min took the call in the study with the door open. Amora was in the corridor. She had not planned to be there. She'd been walking to the kitchen, and she stopped when she heard Seo-jin's voice coming through the phone, thin and compressed and stripped of everything it had once carried. "What do you want?" Seo-jin said. "Name your price." "What do you want from me?" Kang-min was quiet for a moment. "I want you to remember this feeling," he said. "For the rest of your life. I want you to remember what it felt like to sit in that office and realize that everything you held was already in someone else's hands. And I want you to understand that the woman you threw out in the rain, she built a kingdom in the time it took you to destroy a marriage." Silence on the line. "We're done here," Kang-min said. He ended the call. He turned and found Amora standing in the corridor doorway. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then she said, "Is it over?" "The business part," he said. "Yes." She nodded slowly. Then, unexpectedly, she felt it, the release. Not the dramatic collapse she might have expected, but something quieter and deeper, a setting down of something she had been carrying since the night that gate slammed behind her. Her shoulders dropped half an inch. Her eyes burned briefly. She did not cry. But it was close. 3 weeks later, Amora stood in the nursery, a room that had been a storage space 2 months ago and was now pale yellow and warm, filled with the things she had chosen herself, trying to fit the last piece of the crib together. She had insisted on building it. Mrs. O had offered 4 times. She had declined 4 times. This was something she needed to do with her own hands. She heard footsteps in the doorway. Kangmin stood there, still in his work clothes, jacket off, sleeves rolled, looking at the half-assembled crib, then at her, then at the instruction manual she had discarded 20 minutes ago. He crossed the room, crouched down beside her, and picked up the piece she was struggling with. He looked at it once. Then he looked at the crib. Then he simply slotted it into place, steady and sure, the way he did most things. Their hands were next to each other on the railing. Neither of them moved. "Thank you," she said quietly. He didn't answer immediately. He was looking at the piece he had just fixed, and then his eyes moved to her, not the way he looked at a plan, not the way he looked at a room full of people he was calculating, but the way he had looked in the library at 3 a.m. Like a man who had stopped performing and was just present. Just there. Just hers. "Amora," he said. "I know," she said. And she did. She knew it the way she had known about her daughter, not from a document or a declaration, but from the body, from the deep and reliable knowing that lives below words. She leaned forward and kissed him. Not dramatically. Not with the weight of everything that had brought them here. Just simply, and with certainty, the way you do something when you have decided it is true. He kissed her back the same way. Outside the nursery window, Seoul stretched wide and lit up in the early evening, the same city that had watched her thrown out and left in the rain, now full of light below a sky that was finally, for the first time in a long time, quiet. Amora had come to Korea for a love story. She had almost lost herself searching for it in the wrong man. Kangmin had never promised her love. He had promised protection, power, and the truth, eventually. But in the wreckage of everything Seo-jin had destroyed, she had found all 3. And then, past the plan and past the arrangement and past every reason it should not have worked, she had found something she had not put in any agreement. She had found a home in a person. And the secret Kangmin never fully told her, the reason he was really in that rain on that specific street on that specific night. He would tell her when their daughter was old enough to hear a love story. When she could understand that sometimes the most important things in a person's life arrive dressed as strategy and only reveal themselves as fate much, much later. If this story moved you, stayed with you, or had you holding your breath at any point, please hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second and it means everything. Drop a comment below. I want to know, did you trust Kangmin? Or were you watching him the whole time? Subscribe for a brand new Afro-Korean Storytime every single week.